Hello guys, welcome to episode 2 of this Jotai tutorial. I hope you've already watched the previous episode, and if that's not the case, please make sure you do that because in the previous episode we covered a lot of ground. We introduced Jotai, we kind of scaffolded the first atom. We used that atom and we talked about the concepts behind Jotai. Now in this episode I am going to create a more sophisticated, let's say, atom for our application. We're going to create another component and we will generally take the application to the next step. So the objectives of this episode: we're going to create a functionality, implement a feature for the user to create books. We're going to update the state of the atom using the useAtom. We're going to understand how Jotai handles reactivity and immutability, two very important concepts. We're going to build a big book form component, a new component for the user to create books, and we're going to add local validation. Of course, the last item is an optional one, but we will see how it turns out. So let's talk about atoms again. As I told you in the previous episode, atoms are like useState. So useState creates a local state, a local piece of data inside of a component. So that component owns that state, right? So atoms are like useState. They're granular, they're kind of very, very fine-grained, but those are not local to a simple single component. Those are globals. So atoms are globally accessible by all of the components. Every atom holds a piece of a state, and useAtom as a hook is how components read and write that state. So if you're familiar with useState, I have another playlist on the channel about states, hooks, props. Take a look at that playlist as well. So if you're familiar and comfortable with using states and useState hook, useAtom is very similar. The only difference is that when you use useState, you are creating a local internal piece of data for that single component. But when you are using useAtom, you are actually accessing a global piece of data, a piece of data that is globally accessible to all components. So you need to, you read the atom with the value, or you write to it using value and set value. I'm going to talk about this in this episode as well. So in Jotai, if you want to access an atom, you use useAtom and then the name of the atom, and then it returns a tuple or tuple, and then you can capture that inside of these two pieces of data, value and set value. Using set value, you can update the value inside of your atom. Using value, you can read the current value of your atom. So this is very similar to useState, right? With useState, you can also create an internal piece of data for your component. So let's update the book atom to include basic book information. Previously, we created the books atom, but the books atom that we had in the previous episode had no data. Right now, we're going to create two objects inside of that array, and then we're going to create another component, book form component, inside of the components folder. This component is going to allow the user to add books to the atom. So this is, of course, very important. As you can see, we are creating some local state for the properties of a book. For example, title, author, status. We are using useAtom to access that array called books. And not only we are going to use the values, but we want set books because we want to update the values inside of the books atom as well. We want to be able to add some values, add some books to it, right? And then we have this function which is going to handle the submission of the form. And as you can see, I am creating a new book, and then using the set books, I am updating the value inside of that atom. I'm not talking about these because I am assuming you're already familiar with these different pieces of code. If that's not the case, there are other basic, let's say, elementary courses on the channel that you can use. Now I've got this form element. I am handling the submission of the form using that function. I am binding my elements, for example this input, to the state called title, the next one for author, and then for the next section, which was like the status of the book, I am rendering a select element with different options to read, reading, read, and then I am submitting the form, right? And when I am submitting the form, the submission of the form is going to add that book to the state. So let's get to Visual Studio Code now. Let's go to the atoms first, update the atom, and then create that book form component. So I have created a new branch. I have committed the code on the previous branch. Now what I want to do is to go to my books atoms, and I am going to remove this code and write the new version of the code, importing atom and creating a single atom called books atom, which is an array with two objects. The Hobbit and Clean Code by Robert Martin. Now that the atom has been updated, instead of seeing that paragraph tag, we're seeing the names of the books. But this is not what we want. We want to create another component called book form. And what I am going to do is to write the code for this book form component, which will allow the user to add some books to the atom. Again, importing useAtom because we want to access the atom. And we're importing books atom from bookatoms.js. We're accessing the books atom using useAtom, and then 3 local states for the component. The third one, a status, has the default value of to read, and then the handle submit function to handle the submission of the form. And if everything is fine, we're going to create this new object with ID, title, author, status. And then we're going to update the atom with setBooks, adding that new atom to it, and then resetting those 3 pieces of data. Now let's write the code for our template. So we're going to have a form. We're going to handle the form using handle submit function, and inputs to be bound to those states, title, author, and status. Another input for the author, and these are the 2 data binding going on here. Now the select. So we're going to have options for to read, reading, and read. The select is also bound to the status local state, the button, and we close out the form. So this is the single book form component that we have. Now let's continue with the notes. I'm not going to talk about the we already talked about this. Now let's continue talking about the book list. We want to update the book list. Inside of the book list, as you can see, we are showing the we are using the books atom, and then we are going to render this piece of code. So we're going to show the title, the author, and then the status, and then we are going to update app.jsx. But I want to talk about something very important. So as you can see here, we're capturing books, only books. But here, we're capturing books as well as set books. Now, let's talk about this. In the code above, notice we don't have set books in this line because we're only destructuring the first item, books, of the tuple or tuple returned by useAtom, the value of the atom. So the full tuple returned by useAtom is like this. So it gives you the value itself as well as a function to update the value. So value is the current state held by the atom, and set value is the function to update that state. So in this case, we are only interested in having the current state of this atom. So it is the same as using this but we're not, of course, we're not going to use the set books because we do not care about updating the books atom. We're only going to read the current value because we're inside of the book list component. But when we want to update, of course, the state, when we want to read and remove or add books, we need both of them. For example, inside of the form component, book form component, because we wanted to update the atom as well. So this is it. Now let me go to the book list component. Book list. This is what we are rendering right now, only the title of the book, but I am going to write not only the title but also the author and status. So again, useAtom. Inside a book list, we're only going to capture the books array itself. We do not need to have set books. We don't want to change it. In this component, we're only going to read the value of the books array, and then we're going to return this template. So ul, for each book inside of the array, let's render the li element, and then the author, and then the status, and we're done. So this is what we get, right? So the name of the book, the author, and the status. Now the next step is to update the component, the app component. So inside of the app component, not only we want to have the book list, but we also want to have the book form, because with book form, we are going to allow the user to enter the data of some new books as well. And I can go on and say React development made awesome by me, and the status is to read, and I'm going to add this, and as you can see, I get the title of the book, I get the author, and I get the status. And if I refresh the page, of course I'm going to lose that third book because nothing is persisted yet. What I can also do is to go to my index.css and add some styling to the application, to the form, to make it look a little bit better. So display, flex direction to column, gap, max width, and we're done. So this is the current status of our application. Now let's continue with the notes. Now you should be able to see initial books, add new books with title, author, and status, and see them update instantly via the useAtom. And that's a wrap for this episode. In this episode, we created and modified a list of books using useAtom. We built an interactive book form with local state and atom updates. And then we explored how atom-based state is shared globally and reactively. I hope you've enjoyed watching this episode as well. If that's the case, first, give this video a thumbs please, share it with a friend, that really helps. And stay tuned for the future episodes, because as you see, we're developing the application one step at a time. We're exploring new concepts, and we're developing the app with new features. So stay tuned for the upcoming videos as well.